It was supposed to be temporary, just two people sharing an apartment until life found them better options. He moved in with a few bags and a tired smile, saying little, keeping to himself. I wasn't looking for a best friend. Neither was he. But loneliness has a way of sneaking into quiet spaces, weaving threads where none are expected. At first, it was simple things. Who'd take out the trash? Who got the shower first in the mornings? We lived parallel lives, brushing past each other with polite nods and half-hearted smiles. But nights were different. Somehow, conversation found us in the dark, music playing low, mugs of cheap coffee in hand, sharing pieces of ourselves we hadn't meant to give away. He listened like no one else ever had, his attention deep and undivided. I found myself telling him things I had buried, fears, dreams, the stupid things that made me feel small. He didn't laugh. He didn't flinch. Instead, he shared his own bruised pieces, as if trusting me with the parts of him that still hurt. There were no grand moments, no sparks flying. It was slower than that. Safer somehow. It was in how he'd leave the porch light on when I came home late, how he'd remember the small things I said in passing and bring them up days later. It was in the easy way our shoulders would brush as we squeezed past each other in the narrow kitchen, in the lingering glances that felt heavier with every passing day. One evening, a storm knocked the power out, and we sat huddled together on the living room floor, surrounded by the soft flicker of candles. I watched the light dance across his face, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared. We talked about everything and nothing, voices low and steady, as if we could somehow hold back the night by speaking softly enough. There was a moment, a breath, where I thought he might reach for me, where I almost hoped he would. Instead, he smiled, a small, knowing thing, and offered me the last piece of chocolate from the bar we were sharing. I laughed, shoving his shoulder playfully, and the moment passed like a secret neither of us dared to claim. Trust, once fragile, had rooted itself quietly between us. I trusted him more than anyone, more than I had ever trusted before. It was a dangerous kind of trust, the kind that made you believe you were safe even when you should have been wary. Looking back, maybe I should have seen it then. The way. Something unspoken flickered in his eyes, something he buried too deep for me to reach. But that night, in the soft glow of candles and shared laughter, I believed in him completely, and that belief would cost me more than I ever imagined. The shift was almost invisible at first. A late reply to a message, a missed dinner he used to look forward to. I told myself it was nothing, that life got busy, that people needed space. But still a quiet ache began to take root where comfort used to live. He started taking calls in the hallway, voice low, eyes darting toward me when he thought I wasn't looking. Conversations ended abruptly when I entered a room, replaced by hollow smiles and clumsy small talk. It wasn't like him to hide things. It wasn't like us to need walls. I tried to be patient. I joked about it once, teasing him about his secret, double life. He laughed too hard, too fast, and changed the subject before I could push further. I smiled along, but something fragile inside me splintered a little. Nights once filled with effortless conversations grew heavy with silence. He stayed out later, sometimes not coming back until the sun was threatening to rise. I sat awake in the living room once, pretending to be asleep when he stumbled through the door. His face looked different, drawn tight, guarded. I wanted to ask where he'd been, who he had been with, but the words refused to leave my mouth. The more I tried to hold on, the further he slipped away. It wasn't just the missed dinners or the hurried conversations. It was the feeling that whatever had been blooming between us was now wilting in the dark, starved of the honesty it needed to survive. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that he was just going through something he didn't know how to share. Maybe he was scared, like I sometimes was, of how real everything between us had begun to feel. Maybe he needed time. Still, there were moments that cut deeper than I could explain. Finding his jacket thrown carelessly over a chair, heavy with the scent of someone else's perfume. Hearing him laugh, that full, easy laugh, in the hallway, while talking to someone whose voice I didn't recognize. Each little thing chipped away at the trust I had once held so fiercely. One evening, I cooked his favorite meal, a peace offering for a war he hadn't even admitted to starting. I waited, candles flickering against the fading daylight. A table set for two. Hours passed. The food grew cold, my heart colder still, when he finally texted. A rushed apology, an excuse about being caught up with work. I knew he was lying. I didn't even have the strength to reply. I just sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me, wondering when exactly the person I trusted most had become a stranger. I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to believe in us. But somewhere deep down, I could feel it. The trust unraveling thread by thread, and with it, the fragile hope that maybe we were meant for something more. The truth revealed itself not with a bang, but with a quiet, merciless whisper. I hadn't meant to overhear it. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the hallway, drawn by the sound of his voice carrying through the thin walls. He was on, the phone, laughter laced with something unfamiliar. Guilt, maybe. Or worse, indifference. I swear, he doesn't suspect a thing, he said, the words slicing through the dark, like a blade. He's so easy to keep around. Makes life simpler. You, no. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs, willing myself to believe I had misunderstood. But the conversation went on, each sentence a slow, deliberate betrayal. He spoke about me like I was a convenience, a background character in a story he had outgrown. Nothing real. Nothing worth staying for. I backed away, feeling the floor tilt under my feet, retreating to the safety of my room before he could notice me standing there like a ghost in the hallway. I closed the door softly, as if slamming it would shatter whatever pieces of me were still holding on. Everything spun in my mind. The late nights, the shared secrets, the quiet moments that had felt sacred. Were they all lies? Had I imagined the closeness, the tenderness, or had he simply worn the perfect mask until it no longer served him? I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, numb. Betrayal wasn't the fiery explosion I had once imagined. It was this, a slow, suffocating collapse, silent and unseen, leaving nothing behind but ruins. Memories flickered like broken film reels. His careful attention to my words. His smiles that lingered just a little too long. The way he had, once, looked at me like I mattered. Now every kindness felt sharpened into a weapon, every glance a performance. I thought about confronting him, about demanding answers, but some small, stubborn part of me refused to give him that satisfaction. He had already taken enough. My trust, my affection, my belief in something genuine. I wouldn't hand him my anger, too. Instead, I packed quietly. A duffel bag, a few clothes, the essentials. I left the framed photos on the shelf, the ones where we smiled too brightly, pretending nothing could touch us. Let them stay behind, like monuments to a friendship that had never truly existed. When I stepped out of the apartment, the night air hit me sharp and cold. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Some doors, once closed, are better left unopened. As I walked into the darkness, a strange sense of clarity settled over me. I had trusted him more than anyone, and he had shown me exactly who he was. It hurt, more than words could say, but it also freed me. Because now, for the first time, I understood Some betrayals aren't about anger. They're about survival. And tonight's survival meant letting go. Days blurred together after I left. The city felt colder, bigger, as if it had swallowed me whole and left me wandering without a map. I found a small room on the other side of town. Nothing special, just four walls and a window that looked out onto a cracked parking lot. But it was mine. It was enough. At first, the silence was unbearable. Every creak of the floorboards, every drip of the leaky faucet reminded me of what I had lost. Or rather, what I had thought I had. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, for an apology that would never come, for a reason that would make the hurt make sense. But the days stretched on, empty and unapologetic, and slowly, I stopped waiting. There is a kind of grief that comes with betrayal. A mourning not just for the person who hurt you, but for the version of yourself that trusted so completely. I had to bury that version of me. The one who believed in shared glances, in whispered promises, in the safety of another heart. Some nights, I still thought about him, not with anger. That fire had long burned itself out, but with a strange, distant sorrow. He had been a chapter of my story, one filled with laughter and hope and sharp, aching loss. But he was not the whole story. He never had been. Slowly, life stitched itself back together. I made new routines, met new people. There was a guy at the cafe down the street who always remembered my order, who smiled at me like he saw the pieces I was trying to glue back together and didn't mind the cracks. There was a quiet peace in that, in being seen without being used. I learned to find joy in small things. The warmth of morning sunlight on my face, the hum of the city, waking up around me, the comfort of knowing that my space, my life, was mine alone. No one could take that from me again. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in bruised purples and golds, I stood by my window and let myself feel it all. The hurt, the loss, the quiet triumph of survival. I realized that trusting someone isn't the mistake. The mistake is thinking that betrayal defines you. I had loved deeply, trusted fully, and been broken because of it. But I was still here, still standing. Maybe one day I would trust again. Maybe not. But either way, I had learned something precious. That the heart, though fragile, is resilient. That even after the worst kinds of betrayals, it can still beat with hope. And as I turned away from the window, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning,